everyone, Jay here from Jade Productions, here with, this is the next video in the Robotech How to Play series, and we're going to dive in right now, go through the character creation process, and create a character straight up. So, your first step in character creation is quite literally to review the story with your GM and decide upon general concept, you know, get a guideline of what kind of era you're playing in, what kind of adventure we're doing. So, in this particular case, we're going to go for something Invid themed, and we're going to be making Locke, the main protagonist from the Robotech Invasion video game for the PlayStation 2. I forget when it was made, what year it was, but we're going to go with him, and we're going to make that. That's going to be our character concept. Locke is very much a one-man wrecking machine, because it's a first-person shooter slash third-person shooter, so he's going to be really combat-orientated in our mind. He's going to be very solemn and not very speakative. Gives us an idea of where we're going to go with him. And since he's technically an Invid, we know what we're going to do with our races and such. So there's our concept, because we know from our story, from reviewing it with our GM, we're going to do something Invid Invasion set piece during that for whatever game we're running. So that is literally step one. And we're going to be filling out this character sheet here on the Roll20. The character sheet's pretty decent here on the Roll20. And we're going to be filling it as we go so that I can show you the step-by-step process of how a character gets made. So, now our second part is we will be picking our race. You can find all the rules on the step-by-step process for the build sequence on page 16. So step 2, we'll be choosing our race. We will be choosing our race will be Invid, one of the alien races introduced in the Homefront supplement from the New Generation portion of the anime, because he is a simulagent, and we're just going to note that down, because simulagents are a little different from regular Invid. They play just like humans, but they have a subconscious or conscious connection to the hive mind. Next, we hit step 3. Step 3 is picking a career. So there's a couple of different careers to do. There's entertainer, marine, officer, pilot, spy, technician, or volunteer. There's also nomad, introduced in Homefront, and there's also triumvirate, introduced in Homefront, which is exclusive to the alien Tyroleans, who are the race that make up the Robotech Master Empire. So we will simply be going with probably the Marine in the case of Locke, because he's a very physical guy. The pilot would be acceptable. The careers begin on page 18 of the core book, the core Macross book, and you pick one of these, and they give you a lot of your core starting stuff, but they're not something you're hard locked into. They're more of a general guide of how to build your character. So we could build Locke a couple of different ways. We could build Locke to be a pilot. It would make him very versatile and good in mecha-on-mecha combat situations. Or we could go with the spy, which would be very interesting. It would be a much more stealthy and tactical way of playing Locke. Or we could go for the Marine, which is very much a physical on-foot brawler who's pretty rugged and versatile, especially with light weaponry when outside of a mecha, but also just generally good in combat, rather than being mecha specialized. So for the purposes of this, since I want to build like a really clear vision of Locke as, you know, that one-man wrecking machine in the video game, we're going to make him a Marine. So being a Marine, we get to go through his various stuff. So one of the first things that being a Marine gives you is it gives you the tactical action talent, which, oh, that's skills, down here, gives you tactical action, which is a very good skill, or talent to have. It's a very powerful talent to use in conjunction with light weapons, because it only applies with light weapons, but it can let you achieve a lot in a single round, in a single burst, but also support your other players when you're not needed. It makes the Marines a very solid core of a party. Then we get one other tactical type action, or tactical talent from the tactical talent section. So The talents begin later in the core book. The page reference for you, if you're paying attention, is that talents begin on page 76 of the core Macross book. In terms of the ones that we're looking at for tactical, there's a couple of different good ones, just because we want to make him pretty effective in most things. In terms of that, we're actually... I think we're going to go with Built Tough. And so Built Tough will give us additional wounds starting. So it'll make him a bit more tanky. And it'll probably be the way in which we go after this. So, and we'll get to wounds in a moment. Then we pick our starting rank. So your starting rank might vary according to what kind of setting you're playing in. You know, your GM might decide not to give you a rank, especially since he's a resistance fighter. So in this particular case, we'll just put rank 1. Rank is used for determining what you can requisition when you have access to requisition chains. Otherwise, you basically, in a new gen era, your GM might make you salvage stuff, or you might use rank to decide what you can try and purchase instead of fame or wealth, depending on what's most applicable. Now, then you get some starting equipment from your career. So, starting equipment for Marines is they get any to support their role as like a soldier, police, officer, or guard. So we get one kit. We'll make it a communications kit. Always a nice, reliable kit. Actually, no, we can pick any kit. We'll pick a medical kit because we'll probably be... I imagine this character probably getting injured a lot, being on the front lines and rather taking a beating. And the idea I have for what I'm going to do next in one of the future build sequences on how I've envisioned this character coming together, the medical kit will be very useful, and I'll explain in a bit. But we'll start with a medical kit. Just because it's very useful. We'll go with one hand weapon, which is a combat knife. We start with one hand weapon combat knife. Then we start with one armor. So we'll start with the good old CVR3, the classic Cyclone riding armor. And then we start with one assault rifle and one pistol. Now, we'll start with the basic Gallant, which is a modular weapon, which can count as both a rifle or a pistol. Always discuss with your GM if he wants to count it as one or the other, or both, but technically it's a modular weapon, so it can be converted to be one. So we'll start with a Gallant, just because it's just a good all-rounder, and it's what he primarily uses in the game. So the H90 Gallant, pretty standard issue. And then we'll take that as his pistol, and then for the assault rifle, we'll just take the EP37 pulse rifle, which is a good, just generic assault rifle for the new generation era found in the Homefront book. Alright, so proficiencies. Now, your thing then gives you a list of selections of proficiencies. Proficiencies are defined on page 15. So, proficiencies are mecha invariants, in which case you pick a specific mecha, and you get proficiency in that mecha and all of its variants. Mecha upgrades, which are specific upgrades that can attach to mecha. Naval vessels, which are specific naval vessels. Space vehicles, which in this case will actually apply to specific space vehicles. Aerial vehicles, which are pretty self-explanatory. They're planes, helicopters, and ground vehicles, which can be various other things. And then everyone is assumed to have proficiency in MPVs, which are just personal motor vehicles, things like motorbikes, cars, and things that aren't, like, really very special. So we just put down MPV, though it might not super matter. It might come up, you never know. Now, the Marine also gives us all ground vehicles, so we can jump into any sort of armored truck, a couple of different things. We could also, hop into a tank at a split second, but that incurs other different penalties. Having proficiency doesn't prevent you from using something. It just means that when you're using something you don't have proficiency in, you're pretty terrible at it. which is one of the general base factors of the Robotech system. You can attempt to do anything, but unless your character is, trained at it, it doesn't mean you're going to do it well. So, yeah. Now, then we get to select one, and we can select any single mecha plus variants, any single space vehicle, all aerial vehicles, or any single mecha upgrade. Now, Locke is most infamous for using cyclones, so we will use our next pick on Cyclone Veritex. And so we'll get all cyclones and all their variants, because they're all covered under that. So, all the different types of cyclones. So, he can use any single one of them. Now, going into what I was talking about before, about, your level of training, and you can attempt anything, but you might not necessarily be good at it unless that's something that your character fictionally is good at. Representing this, firstly, the first sort of area of training of your character and where they excel, what their kind of, general area they want to be in terms of, like, fictional positioning, what they do well is your elements. And so every career gives you a choice of 3 elements to begin with. And basically, when you're in your element, you perform better. So it becomes easier to gain successes. And these can also counteract disadvantages that you might get for acting, outside of your areas of expertise, or attempting things that, like, might not necessarily be something you don't know, but might be extremely complicated or difficult. I'll explain more of this when it comes to skill challenges, so stay tuned for that. Right now, we're just going to stay focused on character creation and how to put it all together. But your element is very simply where your character has their expertise. Now, for the Marine, there's Lone Wolf, Assaulter, and Suppressor. Homefront also introduces the Scout element. I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, but because we're going to make this real quick, the element we're going to choose, because it makes the most sense for Locke, is the Lone Wolf. He spends the majority of the game operating alone, so it sort of fits. And so the Lone Wolf element is, and I'll read this one. You respect the ability of your military peers, but you believe you can do it better alone. You operate without support, and often enter dangerous situations so your friends do not have to. You are in your element when you operate without reliance on a squad for support. So, doing stuff on your own without others assisting you actually allows you to achieve successes easier, which is a rather interesting way of doing things, especially given the way parties can work together to achieve stuff. So, yeah. And then that is it. The last part of the career is explaining the career-specific talent, which in this case is tactical action. So, not worrying about that right now, not super relevant. But that is it. That is what your career gives you. So, that was step 3. Next, you go to step 4. Step 4 is selecting your skills. Skills begin on page 62. There's a number of skills. Now, skills are one of the hardest things that you're going to grasp when it comes to coming to this system, as opposed to many other role-playing games. This is because any skill can be used for any kind of action, so long as you can justify using the cost benefits to guide you as to how you are intending to achieve the results using those skills. So, this will be covered more in the video on skills, challenges, and even in combat, since everything revolves around using these skills. You'll even use them in combat. So there's that to keep in mind. So we're going to really quickly throw together some stuff. We're going to throw in Alpha Strike. We're going to take probably Ambush Tactics. He's a really combat-orientated character. We'll go Close Quarters as well, because the Invid like to get close, and we like to get close, and he's pretty decent. We'll go Escape Artist, because Locke always has a natural luck that seems to manage to get him away, whether it's Invid Conspiracy or just sheer luck. He seems to always make his grand escapes just in the nick of time. We'll go with Cover Your Buddy as well, because Cover Your Buddy is just, he spends a lot of the game, covering for literally his other teammates, which also seems counterintuitive to his Lone Wolf, but it's a way to interact with that and gives him another way of approaching a challenge. You're not necessarily going to always be in your element, but it's where you want to be in, a specific situation, or will give you a benefit if you can achieve that fictional positioning. But your skills, they're your all-rounders. These can be used for everything just based on how inventive you are. Now, as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need one more. So picking a sixth one, because you'll start with 6 skills when you reach this point. All characters start with 6. The last one we're going to use probably would be Man at Arms. So that's a nice, real generic one. So yeah, he's not... The skills might seem like he's really orientated towards combat, but in a pinch, if we need to do something technical, we might use, for example, Man at Arms, drawing on experience and expertise of everything he's experienced so far, with, for example, maybe close quarters, for example, if we're dealing with a technical problem where we're trying to get open a locked door, it's gotten jammed, we're going to draw on our experience and knowledge and use close quarters to try and really, maybe how we describe how we do it is we want to draw on our experience and knowledge to know about these kinds of locking mechanisms so that we can reach inside in the wall and, rip out the right cable violently so that the door opens. And then we would roll that based on our skills. Now, we reach step 5 of character creation. We apply our skill points. So, there's a number of different ways to generate your skill points. Just for ease here, we're going to go with just one of the stat arrays. We'll just go with the versatile one because it's pretty all-round. So we're just going to put our values here, and I'm not going to think about it too... I'm going to think about it a little bit. So we get 3 3s and 3 2s. So I'll put this one as 2. We'll put... actually, I'll put this one as 3, and I'll put ambush tactics down as 2, because Locke often gets jumped and less jumping. And so we'll put close quarters at 2, because he's decent at it, but, most of his time is spent shooting stuff and making sure it doesn't get anywhere near him, because he's still a squishy human, or at least he believes so. He's an Invid Simul agent that has been programmed as an Invid spy. So, that is that. Our skills are just plugged in. Now, this value here will correspond to the number of dice, d6s, that we get to roll when we use this specific skill to try and resolve something. And that will be covered again later in the skills and challenges and combat section. Next, we have step 6, which is creating your natures. Now, you have demeanor and disposition, which basically reflect how your character is kind of viewed versus how they think. So when you roleplay to your natures, you're able to achieve a reroll. Cover more of that on later. But in terms of generating them, the book provides several examples on page 26, but these are examples. You can literally pick any 2 terms that you can think of to describe your character's natures, and you always pick 2 of these. Given Locke's personality, because that's what we want to try and represent with the natures, and kind of how he behaves and how we envision him behaving, I'm going to start off with Solemn, just as 1, and for his second nature, let's pick something like, let's go with Bold, because he's never afraid to leap into the fire to solve a problem. Yeah, we'll go with that for the 2 natures. Next, is step 7. Step 7, you get to select another talent. So, with this other talent, it can be any talent. You can select any talent from the talents section, in addition to the 2 you already gained from your career. So, when you build a character, you should always start with 6 skills and 3 talents at a minimum, along with at least 1 element, 1 proficiency, and 2 natures. That will be your standard by this point, plus whatever gear that your career gives you. So, for the last talent, we're probably going to take the one I'm thinking of, and this is the concept that came to me earlier when we were picking the kits. We'll go with Soldier Up. And Soldier Up gives us a nice little potent combination here in terms of how we can use our talents. These have a limited use, but yes. And so that is what we'll pick for our third free talent choice. It can be any talent, just to reiterate. However you want to do it, from any of the talent sections to help you flesh out your character, which provides a lot of options given the number of talents. Skills, typically are stuff that is more based around fictional positioning and getting dice and achieving successes. Talents are all very mechanical things designed to give you a very solid, explicit mechanical bonus, within the system. So, talents are very, very powerful, and they complement and combo with your skills. So, now we go to step 8. Step 8 is you record your health. Your health is going to be based on what you have as your base default race. It can vary greatly. Simul Agents, though, on page 194 of Homefront, they just have standard human stats because they're designed to impersonate them. So we start with these 3 base wounds here. Now, these are light wounds. They are the light category, and they're divided into 1 critical and 2 brawl. The distinction between brawl and critical is important for how fast they heal. Critical wounds heal slower, brawl wounds heal faster, but they are all the light damage subtype, which is the damage type associated with, small things like humans and vehicle and, cars, smaller enemies and such. Yeah. Now, when it comes to that, we've also got some bonuses to apply, though. Mostly because we chose to buy Built Tough. So Built Tough actually gives us extra wounds to start with. That's why I chose it. So Built Tough on Invid Simul Agents has the same effect because they're treated as humans. So we add 2 additional brawl wounds. So we actually gain these. So we now instead have 5 wounds to begin with, which is pretty chunky. Anything above 3 is pretty, above average. You don't have a lot of wounds, so it is fairly easy to die when things go horribly wrong. But it takes a lot of effort to get to that point in some cases, depending on whether or not you use high lethality rules. That will be covered again later when we talk about damage. In the case of Locke, it's kind of important because we bought the talent Soldier Up, which lets us sacrifice some of our own HP to get extra successes, which is a pretty fun combo that we can do. Now that we've recorded our HP, we record our burnout. Now, your burnout for most races starts at 5. Burnout can be increased later. Burnout is the total number of dice you can roll as part of a single roll before you start gaining fatigue. And I'll explain that more later. So, but that is it for now. Our burnout is recorded as 5 because it's pretty much standard for everything but a few races. Then we have step 10, recording our speed. Our speed starts at, generically for most human-sized creatures, it's 30 or 3 ground units. So I'm just going to leave that there. It's already here on our sheet, so we're all good. And then we reach step 11. Step 11 is enhancing your character. And this final step gives you a couple of extra points to spend on a little chart to kind of round out and customize your character even further. But a lot of how your character will behave will come down to, the options seem like there's not that many, but when you take into consideration the numerous ways to use them, there's a very, very, very high number of combinations that are available. The sheer choice of freedom because of how creatively certain talents and skills can be applied, they are what create the meat of your character and how they behave. So it's very important to think about how your character does stuff when you are reviewing the story in point 1 and creating your concept. Now, we have, in our case, as we go to enhance our character, we have 5 enhance points. So we can spend those to obtain one of any of the following up to once each. And they all have a different points cost. We could get either an extra talent for 4 points, a new skill for 3 points, a brawl wound for 3 points, a rank increase for 2 points, a fame increase for 2 points, a skill increase for 2 points, to a maximum of 4. We could increase our speed for 2 points to speed 40, or we could gain additional proficiency for 1 point. Now, there's a couple of different ways we could do this in terms of trying to figure out how to flesh out Locke. So, Locke definitely has a lot of different stuff. I think for Locke, what we might do, since we have 5 points to spend in total, is we'll instead get ourselves an additional brawl wound, just so that we are really, really chunky on Locke, since he's definitely a Cyclone specialist, and if things go very wrong, having more wounds will help and save us, plus it lets us get more uses out of our Soldier Up talent. Then, with our remaining 2 points, we'll then grab ourselves increased speed to take ourselves up to speed 40. And that will spend all of our enhancement points. So, because Locke's pretty fast and he does a lot of running for, well, a majority of the game. So, taking that concept, we've now finished step 11, and our character creation is done. I went a little slow here, but as you can see, it's pretty easy and simple to slap together characters pretty fast. You'll see that there's still some empty things on the character sheet. These are things we don't have to worry about at this stage. For example, dramas, and this box here, which is used to record dramas and fatigue, which we'll, of course, cover later. For now, though, that is the crux of character creation. That is the process you go, and all the things you need to know in order to follow through with it. You'll also notice that we still have things like fame and wealth. Fame and wealth are things that are earned throughout the campaign, through roleplay, and can largely be based on backstory. Entertainers largely use fame to increase their influence, and it's relative to like some of the power that they're capable of expressing when they support allies or perform. Whereas wealth is a different measurement which can be used for a number of different things, and is definitely more of an influence on roleplay rather than anything else, and it's just a quick way of measuring it. So these are things that are not completed during character creation, so you leave them blank. They will develop as you play, and based on whatever backstory you submit to your GM. GMs just keep them in mind based on things. Some, like the entertainer, might start with a level of fame, whereas most other players won't start with a level of fame. So that concludes this particular video on character creation. If you have any comments, please leave them just down below, and we will get back to you and address any questions that you might have on character creation. Of course, the Strange Machine Games Discord is constantly monitored, and everyone in there is capable of answering questions, and the designers themselves can answer your questions directly. And the SMG community page on Facebook also is able to respond very quickly to any questions that might arise and explain things to you further. So that has been it from me, from Jay at Jade Productions, and I'll see you in the next part of our How to Play Robotech.